Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. You can tell that the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre have momentum not just from their rallies, but from the fact that the opposition party leaders are all training fire on him. Even Jagmeet Singh is mostly firing on the Conservatives because they are the most likely party to be stealing NDP seats. Mark Carney's taking shots, Jagmeet Singh is taking shots, weird leftist TikTokers and YouTubers are. I want to go through it all with you guys today. But first, just a reminder, guys, if you like my federal election coverage, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet a subscriber. I bet about half of you are not subscribers watching this right now, as well as leave a comment, guys. Really helps us in the algorithm, and I really like to go scroll through and see what people are saying about the topic of the day. Anyways, without further ado, let's start off with Jagmeet Singh, the saddest man in this entire election because nobody is paying attention to him. I am doing a public service for the NDP and Singh right now by even deigning to mention their existence. If you look at the Google Trends charts, it's like basically just Poilievre and Carney fighting back and forth for attention. And then every once in a while, you see a little boop on the chart showing that people did notice Jagmeet Singh. By the way, do you know what the last thing that got Jagmeet Singh any attention on Google Trends was? It was him campaigning with the OnlyFans girl, as well as taking a photo with guys wearing fetish dog masks. That was the last time people paid attention to Singh up until me making this video right now. But here is Jagmeet Singh trying to attack a conservative candidate and calling for Poilievre to drop him.
This message is for Pierre Poilievre. Pierre, you're being called out for refusing to drop your candidate, Aaron Gunn. He's denied the devastation and harm of residential schools.
No, he didn't. He just objectively did not. He is talking realistically about residential schools, that it was not genocide and there are not 215 graves next to the Kamloops residential school. That's just realism. You can still say, hey, residential schools, net negative, big net negative, but it's not denying residential schools to not give in to activists' fantasies, which are really just created to, generate a catalyst for them to get really bad land deals signed and get other sort of concessions from the government. Anyways, I'll let him keep slandering Aaron Gunn for a bit.
And defended Putin's attacks on 2S LGBTQ plus people. 25 mayors and councillors from North Island communities, the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, the First Nations Leadership Council.
By the way, just flat out far left front group. This same organization has been calling for the charging and potential jailing of sitting BC MLA Dallas Brody for also just saying there are not 215 dead children under the Kamloops residential school. By the way, funny thing is that nobody attacked Aaron Gunn for this until the election came and he was running as a candidate. He said this stuff years ago before he was a candidate, and no one made a fuss about it because it's true and they had no incentive to use it against him. Now that he's running an election, a bunch of left-wing activists come out of the woodwork to attack him because they want the Liberal or the NDP to win. That's literally it. That is how shallow this entire story is. And yeah, the other thing about he endorsed Putin's attack on 2S LGBTQ people, that's a massive misread. I disagree with some of the things Aaron Gunn said, but these are comments from 11 years ago. And it was just dumb comments about Russia invading Crimea. There is popular misinformation out there that, the Russians had to invade Crimea. No, they didn't. It's just silly. But it's a comment from 11 years ago, and we're pretending it was something that was said like 5 minutes ago. By the way, it was less than 11 years ago that Jagmeet Singh was sitting at a Khalistani rally, sitting at a meeting in San Francisco, endorsing terrorism, basically. The man is a radical Sikh separatist, and he's going to cast aspersions at something Aaron Gunn had said that's not really that fundamental to Aaron Gunn's character 11 years ago.
And the regional chief of the BC Assembly of First Nations have called Gunn's comments extremely troubling, blatantly racist, and offensive.
Okay, those people are lying. That's all I would say.
But instead of dropping your candidate, you've attacked these leaders and denied the truth. That's not leadership. It's wrong. Pierre, do the right thing, apologize, and drop Aaron Gunn.
He's fighting for relevance so hard right now. The only thing I do want to say about this whole thing, and I've said it in another video, but I just want to repeat it here, it is so hypocritical. All of the BC conservatives who are supporting Aaron Gunn, who were perfectly fine throwing Dallas Brody under the bus for her literal exactly the same comments. In fact, when Dallas Brody was bringing it up, she was doing it in her role as the attorney general critic, trying to stand up and protect BC lawyers who are being like basically attacked by their own law association for standing up for the truth about the Kamloops residential school. So I have so little time for all the people who justified the cancellation and the woke struggle session against Dallas Brody because it was politically convenient for them to get rid of a blue conservative from the caucus of the BC Conservative Party because it's a bunch of woke red Tory BC United people who have basically taken over the HQ of that party. But then when it's Aaron Gunn, suddenly we're all going to defend Aaron Gunn. We should, but we should defend both. It's not that hard, guys. It's just called principle and consistency. Anyways, now let's move on to another attack Jagmeet Singh made against Pierre Poilievre, because Poilievre, and it gets a good indication he has a lot of momentum, Poilievre is the biggest man in the room right now. And so Carney isn't really that much of a target. Yeah, Jagmeet Singh has been throwing some punches at Carney, and some of them are not terrible attacks, like him hiding money away on like a Caribbean island for Brookfield Asset Management. He's hit him for some other things where Carney's like a fake lefty, which I guess that's a good line for the NDP. I don't care if Carney's a lefty or like I don't care if he's an insufficient lefty. He's just not on the right. I'd rather vote for the Conservatives, obviously, but he's mostly only been attacking Poilievre because it's the only way for Jagmeet Singh to get any attention, because Carney's an inherently boring target. And so Jagmeet instead has been mostly firing on the opposition leader, which makes him basically just like a left-wing version of Maxime Bernier. You're just attacking the people who aren't even in government as your main line politically, which it just makes you utterly pathetic. You're not even willing to attack mainly the people who are already in office.
Wow. And
it's like a two-line throwaway letter he wrote him.
Right. And he wrote this like kind of like attacking unions. It shows you who he really is, right? Like, I'm glad you kept this. This is proof, you know. We know there's lots of proof, but this is another example of him in writing condemning workers.
So we have a letter from like who knows how many years ago. The paper's starting to yellow, where Poilievre called out labor unions and other types of unions for effectively hurting the economy. By the way, fact check true. The unions are endorsing Poilievre right now, not because he endorses typical union behavior. It's because the unions have actually, at least in the private sector, moved to the right, realizing that trying to effectively extort businesses for higher wages and more benefits while the economy is burning down around you is a terrible formula for long-term success. So many of the unions just want a government that respects people who actually work with their hands and wants there to be basically, you know, a lower tax environment for them to exist in, because union workers also pay taxes. And if anything, they'd be getting more benefits by just lowering taxes across the board than trying to basically exert more benefits and wages out of companies who are already at their limit for what they can pay.
We're gonna get you a good New Democrat MP.
Promise that, me too.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna work as hard as we can.
The whole
Like how awkward he is when he's like, when she's asking, do you promise you'll get me an NDP MP? And he already knows that that's a complete lie, probably wherever this is.
time Alexa was the MP here,
Oh yeah.
I lived away.
We got to get you a New Democrat MP,
Yeah.
so you can be proud of your MP. That's gonna be fighting for you. Yeah, that's what we're working for.
Okay.
He's just so awkward. Yeah, usually the thing I say about Jagmeet is that he can sometimes be charismatic, but in this campaign, it's like somebody just like sucked his soul out and replaced it with a copy of whatever Mark Carney has in his soul. Here is now Frank Dominic, a leftist YouTuber. We'll do Mark Carney a bit later, his attacks on Poilievre. But here is a leftist TikToker trying to attack the Conservatives for partnering with an alt-right, and Spotify is unfairly trying to help Poilievre and Elon Musk or whatever.
Or how about Toby Lukey, the CEO of Shopify? Him and his COO, Kaz Nejechian, I'm sure I said both their names wrong, have been vocally supporting Pierre, as well as launching an organization called Build Canada, which fancies itself as being the Canadian Doge. They want to bring the ethos and mentality of Doge and the corporate overreach of Elon Musk in American politics.
What do you mean corporate overreach? there are people who donated more money in the 2024 election than Elon Musk. It's called unions. Unions are the biggest donors in American politics.
Directly into Canada. Not to mention that Kaz's wife is Candice Malcolm, the founder of the alt-right news organization True North News, which
How is it alt-right at all? True North and Juno are extremely normal conservative outlets.
now goes by the name Juno News. And no, the rebranding hasn't helped them get any better. Candice was granted an exclusive interview with Pierre Poilievre, and if you want a taste for what Juno News reports about, why don't you just look at their headlines? The headline topics listed on their website are, well, not great, including politics, immigration, and crime.
How is that bad? Literally, how is that bad? Oh my goodness. They talk about politics, immigration, and crime on this mostly political news website? Shock, gasp. This is the thing. Leftists think people not being leftist is a problem. And that was like the theme of even Jagmeet Singh's attacks on Aaron Gunn and then Poilievre for standing against like union overreach in the early 2000s. It's like, they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe these guys are not leftists. They're like, yeah, they're not, Frank. They're not.
That's apparently the only important things that they talk about. They also have a polling section, which seems to be dedicated to just saying that the polls that have the Liberals in the lead are false.
No, that's literally not true. I've seen Candice Malcolm and the people at Juno talking about polls. They will talk about polls positively that have the Liberals in the lead, but they're not so gormless as to just endorse polls like Frank Dominic does, that have like the Liberals like 12 points in the lead. Like Angus Reid and Ecos are just bad pollsters at this point. They have bad sampling methodologies. Do you know how you can tell that they're poor quality? Here is something that you'll even see in the Angus Reid polls. When you look at Angus Reid's poll of how confident those who say they're conservative are in voting conservative, they are far more confident that they're going to be voting conservative than those saying that they're going to be voting liberal. And then when you go deeper and ask people who voted in 2021 for the Conservatives who they're going to vote for this time, 90% plus of them are voting conservative. A very, very strong voter retention rate. Usually, if you want to do well in the next election, you want to hold on to more than 80% of your voters. Conservatives hold on to 90% plus of their 2021 voters. So when a poll shows that the Liberals are leading by 8 points, yet the Conservatives are retaining pretty much everyone from last time, and they have visually grown their appeal into different demographic groups and different age brackets, it's nonsensical that somehow everyone still really likes them from last time and they're finding new voters from the other parties, but the Liberals are leading. It just means that you're probably polling way too many hardcore urban area Liberals, and you're not postal code matching this. The best pollsters, Kolosovsky Strategies, Abacus Data, Innovative generally is pretty good. They have a new poll out that's like +8 liberal, which is weird because they just put out one that's like +2 conservative. That might just be an outlier. Like polls do not swing like that. But in general, they tend to be the best ones. And you know what they do? They try and weight their polls by the last election's vote. If your party has a very strong last election voter retention, it wouldn't make sense that you are then slipping in support, because at the very least, you are going to be starting off with all of the voters that you had last time. In fact, the Conservatives have a better voter retention rate from 2021 than the Liberals do. The Liberals, who are only holding on to like 82% of their voters from last election, 78%, are somehow doing better than the Conservatives, even though in the same polls, if you ask people who didn't even vote in 2021 who they're going to vote for, the Conservatives have a massive lead with those people. So somehow, despite growing into no new interest groups of voters, not appealing to the people who didn't vote last time, Liberals are still leading in the polls. That's just called crap methodology. Anyways, going back to Frank Dominic.
Has also used to work for former Conservative Minister and Premier Jason Kenney. And in the past, True North has platformed the founder of the Proud Boys, a group which has now been listed as a terrorist organization.
At the same time, we do not have Antifa listed as a terrorist organization. That alone should just tell you is purely political. Are the Proud Boys good? No, I'd probably say no. But it was obviously just political to make them a terrorist group when they really do not meet the qualifications. It's more of just like a stupid members club for guys kind of on the alt-right. That's really it, and it was not even popular in Canada.
Nice association there. During this interview with True North, Gavin McInnes and the True North journalist were making racist jokes and insulting immigrants. Shopify also recently kept up Kanye West's store that was selling shirts with swastikas on it, because of course he was. They took it down eventually, not
So they did the right thing, but you're still going to hit them for it.
for being hateful, mind you, but for not being authentic commerce. And Shopify also changed some things in their terms of service. Now, they no longer have a prohibition on hate speech or harassment.
That sometime this year, they removed that prohibition and many others from their policy, which now just reads, quote, you can't use Shopify to do anything that's illegal where you do business.
And for one more direct connection, Pierre's wife, Anna, is directly tied to Shopify, with the company hosting her new organization called Lead Her Forward in their offices.
Okay.
Or
I like how, again, like, I don't know what the actual problem here is. It's just nattering. It's just leftist nattering. Well, you know that they don't have a hate speech code anymore. Okay, it's because it's vague and stupid. That's why they got rid of it. Well, they let Kanye West be on their site, and then they eventually took it down. But it still wasn't good enough. Here's another one. This is just demonstrating just how conspiratorial many people on the left are. They will just import American political things into Canada because they got nothing. And here is him talking about Project 2025.
since Chatham Asset Management bought Post Media and other Canadian newspapers, they have exclusively endorsed conservatives. So much for the unbiased media. Chatham also bankrolled the National Enquirer.
No one has a problem with unbiased media. People have a problem with media that pretends to be unbiased.
A pro-Trump tabloid that would buy up the rights to anti-Trump stories and then bury them so they didn't negatively affect Trump. And what about the Heritage Foundation? They are the creators of Project 2025, which is essentially the policy playbook that Trump is following.
He's literally not. Even Trump said he doesn't follow 2025. It's something that the Heritage Institute releases literally every single election. They just put out, like, when Mitt Romney was running as a Republican candidate, they had Project 2012. When John McCain was running in 2008, they had Project 2008. It's literally just their dream book of policies that they like.
They also see the links between Pierre and the MAGA movement, calling him Canada's version of Trump and saying that they were identical. And then there's Kevin O'Leary, who is an investor from Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, known for being, well, a bit of an He has been spotted at
The person talking in this video, by the way, is somebody who endorsed Luigi Mangione shooting that United Healthcare CEO to death. Like, he didn't endorse the shooting, but he's going to tell you why people don't feel bad about it and why you shouldn't have to feel bad that a man was shot to death in the middle of the streets. But Kevin O'Leary's a jerk. He's an a-hole. It's like, dude, you're in favor of violence. What are you talking about?
Pierre
You're in favor of Hamas.
Poilievre fundraisers at mega mansions and is also currently known for being a trader who frequents Mar-a-Lago and Fox News to support the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state. Kevin also likes to call our currency the Canadian peso or Trudeau pesos and has frequently lied about the value of the dollar as well as Canada's economic standing. Then there was former Conservative MP
What does that even mean? What did he lie about? Like, cite one thing here.
Candace Bergen, who has been seen proudly wearing a MAGA hat, and other
Whoa. I can't believe it. Guys, I can't believe it. I guess we can't vote conservative anymore because Frank Dominic has a photo of Candace Bergen wearing a MAGA hat, who was the interim leader at one point. Okay. There's nothing here. You know that Kevin O'Leary supports Pierre Poilievre, and he has criticized Canada's economy at one point. Okay. Who cares? Anyways, let's move on to Mark Carney now attacking Pierre Poilievre. Effectively, I had to go to another tab here, but he's attacking Pierre Poilievre for the most asinine reason I've ever seen. So he's going to try and dunk on Pierre Poilievre because did you know 20 years ago he had a more senior role than Pierre Poilievre did?
Stephen Harper appointed me governor of the Bank of Canada. I worked closely with the late and great Jim Flaherty during the financial crisis. We resolved a number of situations. Many people are familiar with that experience. I note that
Jim Flaherty, who he has been trying to steal the credit from for helping sustain Canada's economy during the 2008 market crisis. By the way, the reason why Mark Carney was cited as having done good work back in 2008 is because, you know what he did, which he's never done since then? He shut up and he did his job. He engaged in quantitative easing that Jim Flaherty and Stephen Harper ordered him to do. He did that, and we generally went through the crisis better than other countries did. That was literally it. Since then, he has been basically thinking that he's a genius, and in the UK was pushing his own Keynesian theories about how the economy should be recovered through Brexit, which destroyed the British economy for like several years.
Pierre Poilievre was not at any of those tables, was not given any of that responsibilities. And note further that in subsequent years, he has not gained any responsibility in managing crises or difficult situations.
Yeah, it turns out that Harper's government was really good, and there wasn't a lot of crises. So yeah, Pierre Poilievre has gained experience being the housing minister and being on other portfolios when he was in the Harper government, not usually as a minister, but someone who's like a parliamentary secretary or was on committees. He has experience. Carney's big dunk here is that Poilievre, when he was 28 years old, had a less senior role than Mark Carney when he was 43. Who could guess why? It's almost like he was 28 years old and you were 43. I know numbers are hard for a man who's an economist like Mark Carney, but it turns out even if Poilievre is an elected official and you are more of a bureaucrat, it's going to be pretty obvious that you're going to be the guy in charge of like a big governmental item where he will sit in the backbench for a while doing some constituency work before he moves up to other things. Patently ridiculous. But here is a not so great moment for Mark Carney during that same press conference where he was called out, rightfully so, for his doublespeak on several issue fronts, including Bill C-69, the pipe that basically what people are calling the No More Pipelines Act that allows activist groups and random individuals to keep challenging pipelines and new energy projects to prevent them from ever getting off the ground. This was asked by a Western Standard journalist who I think did a great job here.
Hi, Jared Yeager here with the Western Standard. So yesterday at your rally, you said Pierre Poilievre's plan is to, quote, divide and be conquered. As of now, Canada is reliant on the U.S. to get our own oil from one side of the country to the other. By not repealing Bill C-69 and allowing Quebec to veto a pipeline across Canada, are you not yourself setting up Canada to be divided and conquered?
Absolutely not. In fact, in the premise of your question, you answer it, which is, if we are going to build, and I am a proponent of building big energy infrastructure in this country.
Except he literally is on tape saying that he wants us to keep our oil in the ground, and he is stumped for oil and gas projects in Brazil and the UAE while arguing with Pierre Poilievre himself in committee as to why Alberta oil and gas projects were not viable.
But if we are going to build big energy infrastructure in this country, there is a we in that. It is not imposed. It is not imposed by the federal government. It's not imposed by an opposition politician. It's not imposed by a company. It requires the support of, in the example you gave, in Energy East of Quebec, the other provinces that are affected. It requires the support, the free, prior, and informed consent of First Nations. So that's the exact opposite, which is that.
No, he's actually literally describing dividing up Canadians, being divided through different interest groups, very niche interest groups, being able to stop projects and delay them for endless consultations, for nonsensical environmental reviews, for Quebec just saying it's somehow nasty and wrong for them to put, like, for Alberta to build a pipeline across their territory so we can actually start to ship oil and gas products to Europe and other jurisdictions. He is literally describing dividing up Canadians between different interest groups rather than saying, hey, it's in the national interest for companies to be able to build pipelines, for our economy to actually function. And he's like, it's not in the interest of any individual government in Canada, not the federals, not the provincials, not a company. It actually is the company's business. They want to build a small pipeline from one place to another. It's not having to destroy giant tracts of land. It is a pipeline that they want to build from one place to another, like the railroad is currently built that moves oil and gas into Quebec. For some reason, Quebec politicians are totally fine moving oil and gas into their province through railways that are already there, but a pipeline that is safer and more efficient and reduces emissions, actually, if you do it, that is nasty and wrong. Carney, no, this is just incompetence. This is just incompetence to pretend like he is somehow unifying people by letting small, motivated interest groups prevent there being any free market in Canada when they don't like it.
Coming together to build. Now, what I've proposed, both
We need to come together to build. No, the bans, the environmental groups, and the Quebec government are not coming together to build anything. They're not building squat. They are just simply holding things up. And once it gets approved, they're not going to like help you lay down the pipe. They're just going to walk away with whatever amount of money you gave them.
both at the First Minister's level and more broadly, is that we as a country use this crisis to identify those projects of national interest, many of which, not all of which, but many of which are energy infrastructure projects, so that we can get those agreements, so that we can come together and we can accelerate. And last point, with respect to C69, what I've also been clear about is the ability under C69, not as it was, but as it is, and the Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Wilkinson, is here, as it is under his leadership. We have an ability.
As it is, we haven't built anything. They're pretending like there's been some new revolution in the implementation of 69. No.
To rely on, as appropriate, impact assessments that are performed at different levels of government. And that is part and parcel of how we can make this work. So I reject the question, but I hope I've provided some illumination. Thank you.
He hasn't. In fact, when he met with Danielle Smith the other day, like a week and a half ago or so, or right before the election, he even promised her he would get rid of Bill C-69. And then he said the opposite in French when he went to Quebec. He's just a hack. That's literally the only takeaway I have here. Now I just want to do a couple more posts just about just how conspiratorial leftists are at this point, who are voting Liberal. This guy named Just Gus, flags in bio, says, make no mistake, these three are aligned in their core beliefs. All three prefer Canada to be part of the 51st state. Smith said the quiet part out loud, and Trump has also said he prefers Poilievre. He literally hasn't said that. He has literally said the opposite. He prefers Carney. Smith and Poilievre are what selling out our country looks like. What are you talking? And this is where I say that leftists are so much more conspiratorial than people on the right. What do you mean? They're aligned in their core beliefs? You mean they're conservative? They like small government? Oh, I guess if you do that, now you're all bad people. You know, Trump believing in small government makes believing in small government evil for some reason. So now if you agree with Trump that the sky is blue, you must be some sort of fascist. This is how stupid. Like they all want the 51st state. Who has said that? Danielle Smith hasn't said it. Poilievre has rejected it outright. And in the case of Trump, he's joking. It's a stupid joke. That's why he hasn't really mentioned the 51st state thing. And the only time he does is he makes an offhand remark, well, they'd still be better with us as a 51st state, before talking about trade or something like that. And that's it. Anyways, let's move on to this lady who I highlighted the other day. And every single day she's ranting about nonsense, thinking that this is like good content. This is like bringing people on side to the Liberal cause. I think it's like Laura Babcock here.
Canadians have their opinions about the last 9 years. I was very critical of Trudeau, really wanted him to step aside.
She was not critical of Trudeau. She wanted him to step aside for purely political reasons, had nothing to do with actual performance.
But that's not now. What is now is we have an enemy on the front lawn of our country. And I'm not interested in anyone who wants to be sitting in the backyard bitching. I'm interested in who's going to be on the front lawn with me and is going to be staring down this bully and is going to fight for Canada and for my future and for my children's future and for the people in our country who are living in poverty. I want somebody on the front lawn who's fighting, and that's Mark Carney.
Imagine being on that Zoom call with Leigh like leaning her forehead forward into you the entire time, talking about, I want someone who's a fight for our country and for my children's future. let's vote for Mark Carney then, the guy who's not going to change any domestic policies, not going to lower taxes, not make it so that your kids can afford homes, going to flood the country with hundreds of thousands to millions of immigrants every year. Yeah, that guy's fighting for our country because he's going to put his finger in Donald Trump's chest and tell him what's up. Laura, get back to earth, Laura. Like, name a domestic policy. Name a single domestic policy. Any liberal support. Name a domestic policy that you think that Carney is head and shoulders above Poilievre on. It's a trick question because right now Carney's basically running on nothing. The only thing you could really name at this point that he's running on is his bloated housing program. Let's build $36 billion worth of like these like snap together houses. Okay, good job, dude. Are you going to lower regulations to make it easier to put up those houses? No. Okay, well, that plan's done. That plan's dead. It's literally the same plan as Trudeau ran on in 2015. Know how many of those houses that they built, how many had they built? Like none. They didn't build anything. It's like when Trudeau, for some reason, promised to build or plant like 3 billion trees, and we have built 0. I have probably inadvertently planted more trees from accidentally kicking pine cones into the ground or something like that than Justin Trudeau and the Team Liberal have planted in the entire time they've been in office. Other than that, what's he running on? Slightly lowering taxes under $50,000? Well, Poilievre's doing more than double his tax cut. So what are we talking about? Everything he's done is either just doing whatever Trudeau did before, but we're going to do it more this time, apparently, or it's just microwaved conservative policy that he stole, pretending he didn't steal it, like getting rid of the carbon tax and the capital gains inclusion rate and all that stuff. Has anyone approached Chrystia Freeland yet and said, does she feel personally insulted by them getting rid of that policy that she apparently dearly loved? Well, she didn't actually dearly love it because it wasn't her policy. It was Carney's policy. And then Carney is pretending that he's bringing a new, fresh look into the government when he's just reversing himself on tons of things. And then his own original policies make absolutely no sense, or they don't make sense in terms of how they're going to implement them. Again, you can't build tens of thousands of units of housing in the next decade if you're not willing to get rid of all the extra government regulations that make it impossible to build anything. Because guess what? Carney likes the amount of bloated bureaucracy because you know what bloated bureaucracy allows you to do? Hire more bureaucrats who will then vote for and work for the Liberal government and its causes. He has no intention of actually making it easier to build, and that is the main thing on housing. Lower immigration and make it easier to build. He is doing none of those things. In fact, he even sacked Mark Miller, who was the only Liberal immigration minister who actually finally lowered immigration by a little bit. He got rid of him because now he has the Century Initiative guys on his side. So I wouldn't be shocked that he's saying, ooh, the economy's slowing down a bit. And turns out we now need the entire population of Kerala, India, to be moved into our country, or else we're going to all stall out. We need all of Bangladesh to be moved in here. We need to have half of Ukraine's population, or else we're not going to be able to get our economy moving. Anyways, so that should be it for me today, guys. Thanks for watching the show. Make sure to like the show, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff. And by the way, sign up on my list, my email list I have linked on my website. It's in the description below as well as pinned at the top of the comments, WyattClaypool.com. In the next set of elections, I want to get more into whenever I see a nomination going on in a certain riding, seeing who lives there, who's on the list based on postal codes, and being able to give people a call and tell them good nomination candidates for the Conservatives that are in that area. Because going forward, I think that's something that we really need to focus on, is making sure that the Conservatives go into elections with as many really solid orthodox conservative candidates as possible. The problem with having nominations just kind of canceled for the Conservatives is, I would say, way too many consultants, way too many people who are community leaders were thrown in as candidates who are not actually ideologically conservative in any way, and not well, they're non-ideological, but they're a business owner. I mean, guys who you don't even know anything about them, and it's just some random dude. It's that can be dangerous in the government, having a lot of people who have no real track record of principle, who are then potentially given portfolios that they have no intention of doing anything conservative in. Anyways, so that's it for me today, guys. Thanks for watching the show, and I'll see y'all later.